Well, my name is Lynnette Khalfani-Cox. I'm known as the Money Coach, and I teach people about personal finances. So how to earn more money, how to save, how to manage credit and debt wisely, or just how to plan for the future.
Yeah.
And so my husband, Earl, and I, we own a financial education company in the U.S., and increasingly we're looking to expand globally. But we've had our business for 22 years, and it's been a huge source of joy for us because we know that money matters affect so many aspects of people's lives. So we like to teach them how to manage that better. So, but you know, in addition to the business side, I guess my biggest and best titles, besides being a CEO and co-founder of a company, is that I'm a happy wife, a mom of 3, I'm a sister, I'm a daughter, I'm a friend, and so I feel like the riches that I have in life are not just monetary. It's really about a great support network and friends and family who love me and who I love back. Well, I've written 16 books, including a New York Times bestseller called Zero Debt, The Ultimate Guide to Financial Freedom. And I tell people honestly that, you know, in my early adulthood life, I was a hot mess financially. I did not have it together at all. And frankly, I was very poor. My father was a shoe shine man from Harlem. My mother was a cashier and a secretary. And after my parents divorced, when I was about 7 years old, my mom had to raise the 5 of us, 5 girls, by herself. And so she struggled a lot. You know, there were many times when we did not have food, or at least not, I won't say we didn't have food like literally to eat, but certainly not as much food as we would have liked. Certainly there were times when our lights got disconnected, times when my mom couldn't pay rent, things like that. So I grew up in Los Angeles, California, and you know, in the U.S., there's a lot of, you know, socioeconomic inequality. And so I lived in a predominantly black area, which was, you know, low to almost moderate income. But they have busing in the U.S. where they would transport or bus students in the inner city, essentially, to wealthy white neighborhoods. And so, so I was bused out to rich areas where I saw my friends, you know, who were students, of course, just like me, but they certainly had a lot more than big houses, pools, and, you know, we were in 2-bedroom apartments. You know, my mom in 1 bedroom and the 5 of us girls in the other bedroom. So, you know, I saw a lot of economic differences. And I think some of that kind of planted the seeds for me to do a little bit of what I do now, to help people with their money so that they can have options and choices in life, and to not feel so limited in their options and their possibilities. The reason we came back, honestly, was that we fell in love with Rwanda. We had the good fortune of visiting 4 African countries in February 2025. We went to Ghana, we went to Kenya, we came here to Rwanda, and then we went to Tanzania. And honestly, when we went back to the U.S., we were like, oh gosh, we were a little bit like...
We were a little depressed.
A little depressed,
A little depressed.
if we're honest about it. But you know, we really looked at our lives and what we do on the business front, our family, our obligations, and we're empty nesters now. Our youngest daughter has gone off to college. And so we said, what's stopping us? There's nothing to stop us. We really knew that we loved Rwanda and wanted to explore more of the country. And so first, what brought us back was just an emotional connection to this place. And so
we were just thinking about where we wanted to go initially, but we kept coming back to, let's go back to Africa, let's go back to Rwanda, you know, and travel around a little bit more. So our business is set up so that we can work from anywhere. We don't have to be in any one office, any one place.
Right.
If there's a meeting that needs to be had, we just go there or fly there. So I was amazed, honestly. I mean, I'd heard talk about what happened in '94, and I knew that was in the past. I came here with an open mind. I went to a few other countries prior. So as my wife said, we went to Ghana, Kenya, and ultimately Tanzania. But as soon as we landed in Rwanda and took the drive into the city, we were like, wow, the place is so nice. It's so clean, so beautiful. And I just measured Rwanda against other clean cities that I'm aware of, and I said, this is the cleanest I've seen, anywhere.
From Kigali, yeah, sure.
So that, we went to the museum, I guess, midway toward the end of our trip, and it was very, it was heartbreaking, and it made me wonder, it's like, wow, during the 90s, what were we doing in the US? What was going on compared to what was going on here? And it's such a contrast, right? And I don't know if a lot of people really realize what was going on. You had certain news outlets, not as many news outlets as you have now, but still, we were just on a whole nother track over there. Yeah. So I was very glad to come here and have my eyes opened.
Yeah. For me, I was amazed at so many things that defied all of the myths and all of the misconceptions that I think a lot of people have about Africa in general, and certainly about Rwanda as well. And so it was like myth busting left and right, So, people will say, oh, it's not clean. And I was like, Kigali is like the cleanest city that I've ever been in, They will talk about safety factors or infrastructure or technology. And I'm like, look at how advanced, how sophisticated, how organized everything is. And yes, how clean, and we felt perfectly safe. And but we're travelers also. And so we know not to, always believe what people say when they're like, oh, be safe when you're traveling abroad. And we're like, you watch out, you be safe there. We feel safer over here.
I grew up in New York. Okay, New York City. I grew up in the Bronx, to be specific. It's one of the five boroughs of New York City. I grew up in the late '70s, in the '80s and '90s, and honestly, it was labeled as a murder capital at one point. Just like other places I've lived. I've lived in places like Philadelphia. I've lived in places like Washington D.C. So we're not too worried about what people say, because we know when you live there, it's a whole different story.
Even though, of course, everybody has a different financial set of circumstances. Some people have higher incomes, a bigger net worth, different jobs, etc. There are some things that are fundamental and that are universal financially, globally as well. And so one of those things is that at the end of the day, there's only 4 things that you can do with your money. You can save it, you can spend it, you can invest it, or you can donate it. And so when people start thinking about proper money management, I try to get them to think about buckets and like different ways to use their money. Certainly in the US, we know that because there's so much debt, so much consumer debt, and I'm not, kind of throwing shade because I was one of those people. I was definitely in debt previously as well. But a lot of times when you are living in a consumer-driven culture, a lot of it is about spending, buying things, and the accumulation of stuff, which of course can lead to debt. So earlier, in my young adult years, there was financial mismanagement. I did not use credit wisely. I had massive amounts of debt. And it was very much tied to not understanding those 4 principles about you have to save some, you have to spend wisely, you should also invest and make your money grow, and of course you want to be charitable and give back. So donating is also a part, certainly for me and my values and my belief system, it's a part of why I'm so blessed today. So I try to be generous in my giving, not just in money, but in my time, in my talents, and my treasures. Well, one of the first things I tell people when they tell me that they can't save or they can't afford to save or they have very little income is that every little bit counts. And savings is a habit, it's a discipline, and it's a mindset as much as it is a financial transaction. So some people might think, well, I only have X amount to save. And so they might not save at all because they say it's such a little amount. But there's this wonderful magical thing, called interest, compound interest even. And so the more you save, the more you get into the habit of savings. And so it's important to develop discipline and to recognize that even if it's a little bit now, a year from now, that little bit will grow. If you set aside some money month 1, and then month 2, month 3, you'll look up 12 months later and you'll have 12x times what you started with. So I tell people not to focus on the amount. It's really about focusing on the habit and the transactional part of savings that you say, I'm going to do this no matter what, because consistency and discipline does help build your asset base and ultimately build wealth too.
Well, we look at travel as a form of learning, of lifelong learning. So we're paying a tuition to go to Africa and to learn. One, to reconnect with our heritage, to understand other cultures, to get ideas, that we can bring home and apply, to our home and share with our family and friends and followers. So we are saving, right? So sure, the airline ticket may be a little expensive, right? But once you're here, there are differences in what it would cost to do something here versus what it would cost to do back home, right? So, I look at it as an investment in ourselves, right? So how are you going to invest in yourself? You could join a gym and you work out every day and you're investing. You pay the gym some fee, you may pay a trainer and you get stronger, you get healthier, and that pays off later, right? Or you might invest in studies, get a degree, you learn a lot, right? Do you take that, do you go get a better job, or you start your own business, right? So in this case, we've built our brand for 22 years, right? We've been successful, in the States. Now we're like, okay, let's start again. Let's learn about the rest of the world, right? So that's why we came back so soon. And we said, well, let's go back and learn some more.
And again, I tell people all the time, because our followers on social media and elsewhere have said, you guys are going back to Africa so soon after you came back at the end of February. We told them the truth. Yes, we came back because we loved it. But also from a financial standpoint, we tell them the good, the bad, and the ugly. We tell them all the truth. So yes, I'm always looking to save money, and travel can be expensive, but it also can be, as my husband said, a form of education, and we consider the cost, the part of the tuition that we're paying. But also, we like to travel smart. So I'll use my airline points and miles in a minute. I'll look for the very best deals. I'll travel on off days. I'll make sure that I'm doing all of the things to reduce and to manage costs and to not just, spend, lamely. Exactly.
That's a great point. So after we went on our first voyage to Africa, we saw clothes being made by hand. I could walk into a marketplace and tell them I want this shirt or I want that fabric and make these pants, make an outfit. We purchased quite a few outfits, in Ghana and in Kenya and in Tanzania, right, on their last trip. And I put a few things in Rwanda, right? But so now I'm back home and I'm preparing for the next trip. And in the old days, I would have, okay, let's go shopping, let's go to the stores in the US and pick up this, pick up that. But I'm looking at the prices and I'm looking at the quality and I'm thinking, well, I could get this handmade.
Yes.
So there, right there, there's a savings, right? So let's say you have a $1,000 plane ticket, that's just to, for example, right? But you don't spend $200 in the States and you come over to any country you pick in Africa, and you're able to pick up those same clothes for less, right? Maybe you save money on not having to check another bag onto the airline. You save on the hassle of dragging all this stuff. You save on the time, gas, and money spent buying up stuff that's probably been imported from Africa and other parts of the world anyway. So it's little offsets that count. The last week or two before we traveled, we didn't eat out. You know, we have 2 dogs. The dogs ate what we eat. We had our groceries. We made sure they had what they wanted to eat. We have what we want to eat. And then, you know what? We're going to eat when we get to Africa. We're going to eat when we get to Rwanda. So it's the average.
We were on lockdown. We didn't eat anything for 2. No, I'm just joking.
Well, we do practice intermittent fasting.
That's true.
So, and I think when we started intermittent fasting, eating 1 meal a day, essentially 1 main meal a day, that's a savings too. So something we've always taught our children. We've always talked money openly in front of our kids. Mm-hmm. They know when, as entrepreneurs, there's feast and famine sometimes. Yeah. So sometimes the checks are coming in, and it's like, yep, everything's good.
And sometimes there's a dry period.
Or the phone's not ringing, and so there's, it's just the reality. But we will share everything with them. Mm-hmm. But one thing we've taught them about is needs versus wants. Mm-hmm. And you have to be able to determine what is a need and what is a want. And, a want can be something that emotionally you just want it, I want it, and you don't know, God might have put that in your heart for some reason, I really want a bicycle, I really want to join this gym, I really want something. Well, okay, give it to yourself, and then see. Like this trip was a want. We could have waited another year, but life is short. And we said, well, why not? Time is now, let's do it.
Well, I actually wrote about this on my blog on askthemoneycoach.com. I wrote about not only, of course, how it would affect investors in the U.S. and their retirement portfolios, et cetera, but also how it would, in fact, affect African countries. And I think there's obviously going to be a significant impact. The challenge, of course, in determining, precisely what the outcomes will be is that, Trump is apt to turn on a dime and to change his policies. So, and in fact, he did recently. So, of course, he slapped, high tariffs on countries all around the world. The biggest one actually was on an African country, was on Lesotho, and it was a 50% tariff. And other African countries had, 31, 37%. I know for Rwanda, it was and is 10%. And those are significant barriers, of course, because ultimately what it means is for jobs could be affected, ability for small business owners to have viability and to continue. That's at risk in some cases. And so whether we're talking about retail stores or activity at ports, et cetera, there's going to be a big pinch, and this is going to be felt globally. There's definitely kind of a reordering of things, not just politically, but economically, of course. But I'll tell you, I'm very impressed that Rwanda's leadership has really advocated for a lot of independence. And I think that is a source of strength. And I think that's ultimately good for the country economically and from a standpoint of just kind of, moral standing and unifying, people here also around knowing we can be resilient no matter what financial challenge we face. Mm-hmm. And, we can be self-sufficient as well.
I know it's not going to be easy to deal with the loss of the aid that they were receiving, but you must think long term, right? You can't control what someone else is doing, right? But what you can do is control how you react and what plans you make for your future, right? Independence, should always be a primary goal, right? And if you have to deal with the pain of losing a source of income aid, support, well, let's put your ingenuity together and figure out how to survive that, how to thrive, so that one day you look back and say, I didn't need it. Why is this here? Why was I given this, right? If you don't let them feed you, they can never starve you, right? So that, to me, I mean, hey, that's the mindset that you have to have. That you have no choice but to deal with it, right?
And I know also that it's difficult when, from a historical standpoint, there's been some accustomed, people have been accustomed, whether it's through NGOs, through communities, towns, et cetera, that have gotten used to receiving certain funds. And I do not diminish at all the impact that loss of aid will have. And there's a lot of disputes. People should know that there's court challenges, et cetera, that going on. But we know around the world this is going to have a huge impact. I think it's very unfortunate. It's certainly not something that I think at least half the country in America was advocating for and would have liked to have seen. But I would say that the silver lining in all of this, if there is one, is that, as my husband said, we'll be forced to get creative, to use the apparent, resources, whether that's from a community level, ingenuity, and initiative, to supplant that with other options and to say, how can we best achieve our own goals and do so in a way that we're standing on our own 2 feet economically and make that a distant memory in the future, that we won't consider that as well as it won't affect us at all. The moneycoach.net continues to grow and expand. We definitely have international ambitions, and part of the reason that we're here in Rwanda is that we believe that globally there should be strong levels of financial inclusion. And we know about the Vision 2050 plan. We understand that Rwanda aspires to be a middle income country, and we support that. And I think that financial literacy and financial education and the growing financial services ecosystem here is very much going to play a role in all Rwandans achieving financial security and in raising the standard of living. And so I see a tremendous amount of promise here. Certainly in our own company, as I mentioned, we're looking for ways to support, to serve, to partner, and to bring the knowledge that we have here and to also learn. It's not a one-way street. It's not like, the U.S. has a different and perhaps a longer, more financially established ecosystem. But I tell you, there's so much I've learned from being here in Rwanda, from community savings efforts to Umuganda, and just I think the things that are supportive of an environment where financial success is possible.
With kindness, and everyone's very friendly and kind, and doors open, when we've asked for them to open for us. So I think part of our, like what my wife said, our journey now is to create bridges between the U.S. and Rwanda, to bring others that we know that do some of what we do in different capacities, to bring that knowledge here and to exchange knowledge and bring it back to the U.S. and create the bridge and the connection that we just long overdue, right? So my WhatsApp contact list is growing and growing and growing. I was texting with somebody from our trip to Ghana. I was texting with somebody else on our trip to Kenya. I have a group that I create, and I think if you look at the Bible, this is how messages are spread, right? You have to travel, you take ideas. We're proficient in AI, artificial intelligence. My wife's written 16 books on personal finance, right? I'm a publisher. My background is publishing. I could take anybody's idea and turn it into a book. I've done this for over almost 30 years. So what can I bring to the table, I know there's something, even if I'm talking to youth, or I'm talking to seniors who can teach me something that I don't know. Tell me about my heritage. Tell me about what I can bring back. I found out that I was, you doing my DNA ancestry.
23andMe.
I know that I'm
Yeah.
part Ghanaian, part Nigerian, part Congolese, and I am a descendant of Ramses III, right? So that's why we went to Cairo last week, right? So, hey, I'm walking around, I see people that look like me, and they say, oh, you look like you're from here. Every country they say, you look like you're from here. So I guess you can see the sort of a mixture.
One other thing I will add, and we didn't talk about this, but I'll just to tell you by way of background. We own a financial education company, and we've had that for 22 years. But we also have other financial and personal interests. We're
Consulting.
Right, we're consultants, but we're stock market investors. We invest in real estate as well. We have 8 properties in the U.S. and certainly because we love the environment here, we're definitely looking for property in Rwanda as well. So many neighborhoods spoke to me. You asked me before kind of what brought us back, and I never wanted to live in any big city. Even now, we live in the suburbs of Houston, in the northwest suburbs. But literally after 3 days here, the first time, I was like, I could live in this city. This is a city that I could live in, because it didn't feel overwhelming to me, like not too much traffic, and it's so beautiful and green and just has a lot to offer. So as a whole, part of what my husband was saying is, and he's the techie in the family, he's really big into AI, and he runs our websites. We have multiple websites, and manages our contracts and our client-facing business, because our business is B2B, and most of our customers are institutions. So a lot of people, they hear, they call me the Money Coach, or our brand, the moneycoach.net LLC, and they think that I'm doing one-on-one coaching or individual coaching, and that's actually not the case. Our business is B2B, so organizations and entities hire us to teach their constituents about some aspect of money management. And they're mostly banks, credit unions, fintech firms.
Or create a
insurances.
curriculum, create curriculums, create a course, create product, whatever is needed. That's when we bring our minds together, and as a team, we can create whatever is needed for I'll call it the campaign that the client asks us for.